Honorable Deputy Speaker on the dais, Dr. Rajiv Sharma ji on the dais as Hussain Saab, somebody who's doing a human service to the humanity, and all my fellow friends present here. Well, ESG, we all know, is probably the most important aspect today. And who would know more than me? I come from a state called Delhi, which last week witnessed temperatures of 48.5 degrees centigrade. This year, we did not see any spring. There was a winter and a summer. And that's what we are talking about, climate change. We are talking of extreme weather conditions. And of course, the Delhi pollution is well known. With that context in backdrop of an ESG conference becomes extremely important. I thank the organizers for inviting me here. And I'll just give a brief perspective. It can be you can call it a school for ESG, what I'm trying to show to you. But I think so it's very important. And ESG is not all about corporates and governments. It's all about individuals also. And I'll tell you why. So if you look at this, we all know there's a growing disparity between rich and poor. The rich are getting richer and poor are nowhere near. While we may say we have eradicated poverty to a large extent, but well, the levels, what we define as poverty, has remained stagnant. Climate change, floods, extreme temperatures, extreme winters, thunderstorms, typhoons, all over the world. We are no exceptions. Gender equality still far from what we desire, especially in our country. This part of the world, the South Asia part of the world, we still need lot to be done, lot to be desired. Corporate governance, we all know, is what it is today. You know, ESG is not just three words. They're all interrelated, and that's why it was formed as ESG. Anything which impacts social will impact environment. So if your poor get poorer, they don't get uplifted, they don't get educated, everything will get impacted. The farmers need to be uplifted, they need to be educated. Otherwise, what they will do is they'll dump everything, they'll burn perali, and it impacts the environment. And all these two together can only be happen if there's a good governance, both at corporate and government level. So let us not look at them independently, but all three intermixed. If you look at this boy, if he has tears in his eyes, who all are responsible for this? I believe this boy is talking to me and telling me, Sunil, तुमने चाहा ही नहीं, सुनील तुमने चाहा ही नहीं, वरना तुम भी रुक सकते थे. मेरी आंखों से निकलने वाले आंसू तुम्हारी आंखों से भी निकल सकते थे. तुम तो ठहरे झील के पानी की तरह, तुम तो ठहरे झील के पानी की तरह, दरिया बनकर बहते तो बहुत आगे निकल सकते थे. So the message what he's trying to convey is that you have to support me and you have to come out of your complacency and move forward and do something. And that is why I say it is also the responsibility of individuals. So how did the ESG evaluate? Evolution took place, we all know, that Indian economy, or for that matter anywhere in the world, in the early 60s was a command economy. You know, there was a diktat, and that is what was followed in economy. And then we had a controlled economy in the 70s and 80s and up to 90s also. And then the liberalization came, and the new decade, and the last 20 years, we see a regulated economy, with the role of regulators is more prominent, and the controlling part of the governance is moving away. But what happened in the past, if you look at, there was no regulation, no control. We had thermal energy moving around everywhere. Need of the hour. Can't blame them, but that was required. And things started moving forward. But then this new millennium came, 2000 onwards, people realized that our lives are getting worse, not better. Unfortunately, when we say lives are getting better, we think it is materialistic. I'm earning more, I've got more comforts, therefore my life is getting better. I think that's something which we must change in our thought process. Our lives are not better because of materialistic things. Our lives are better if I'm healthy, if I'm breathing clean air, if I've got a better drinking water, and I've got a lifestyle which is sustainable. What we all live in this room is not a sustainable lifestyle. So in 2005-06, a bright guy coined the concept of ESG. And therefore, this concept started propagating slowly but steadily. If you go back and you realize that there have been lapses across E, S, and G. And where I say governance, probably I rated top. If you look at it, I put G on the top instead of E and S. Because in the past, E was a little less evil, S was an evil, but G was the biggest evil. You've got subprime crisis, which is a man-made governance failure. You've got large amount of corporate bankruptcies, scams. It's all governance failures, whether at government level or at the corporate level or at the individual level. So governance was never there. It was a promoter-driven boards. You had no accountability on the boards. And therefore, governance always took a backseat. But come 2000, with ESG, people at least started thinking that what is due for me in future, whether I will get money or not. So then this ESG agenda, when it started propagating, we started discussing who are the people who are driving this sustainability ESG agenda. You've got investors who hold the key to everything because they will not put money if you're not complying with ESG guidelines. Today, investors are very conscious about your ESG scorecard. Then you've got the management, which is the CEOs or people like me, who need to change our mindset. We need to start thinking differently and what I have to do for the society, for the environment, and how my governance within the company is shaping out. And the customers. You as customers for products must start demanding. The use of plastic is something which has been so much on our mind, but unfortunately we as individuals do not shun plastics. We are happy to take that plastic bag whenever the need arises. Then there is a regulator. I think that's the role which we are talking about. Regulators have got a very important role to play, and they have to create laws, regulations, because by human as a nature, we always go by the law. If I was to do it on my own, I would probably just tug it away. And then the employees for the corporate world. They have an equal role to play, and they can be whistleblowers if somebody is not following an ESG. And this whistleblower concept came in after people started talking of ESG. Above all, I think so the board of any corporate, or for that matter, even in government, if you talk, let's talk of Council of Ministers, the board, they have an extremely important role to play because everything is top down and not bottom up. At least for ESG, it has to start from the top. People have evolved systems, measures like SCORE. You know, this has been done by a enacting purpose initiative in 2020, where they have said, let's have a score. And score is not, it's a number. What they're saying is you simplify, connect, own, reward, and exemplify. You follow these 5 principles, and you will find that you are moving towards ESG. Each one of us performance or key parameters of assessment has to be based on ESG score. The board needs to look into details of what is happening in the company. Board cannot say that the management is responsible. I think so the board has to drive the agenda. And therefore, boards have to decide that can we have a committee for ESG today? I think so we have a discussion on ESG. We have a very nice para on a a director or audit report, which is probably written by somebody who's not sitting in India and in UK, but he's writing for 20 companies that same para on ESG, not realizing that whether it is true or false. So can we amend? And Honorable Deputy Speaker is here, probably take this voice to the government to say that like an audit committee is mandatory, a compensation committee is mandatory, so is the ESG committee mandatory.
Wonderful recommendation.
And therefore, there has to be a reporting mechanism. And communication is important. If you don't report, you will not know. And the regulators will not know. Well, I've already said that. I won't dwell too much of time on this, the role of CEO and management, but ESG agenda has to be set at the top, as I've been telling. And my businesses have to be sustainable. Like at Essar, I can just mention that we knew we are not ESG compliant because we were always in oil and gas, thermal plants and all. And then we realized that, yes, we are wrong. See, that is an important point, that your realization is important. And we have started moving towards a more sustainable, green business opportunities. And we want to become net zero by 2050. Even though the government has announced 2070, our target is by 2050 we must become net zero. So that's the initiative at the top level must happen, and that's what the promoters are thinking about. You know, it is a wrong feeling that when you implement ESG, your costs go up. It's incorrect. Actually, you start saving money. I'll just show you that 3M, which is that stickers and the 3M company, they saved 2.2 billion through its pollution prevention program. You know, you pay for your health of your workers. If your health of your workers improve, your cost will go down. It will not go up. Now, what do we do? The role of the regulators is to standardize and harmonize things so that people can follow a common platform, what is available. And more important than that, transparency and trust. If you don't have transparency, you will not have integrity and ethics in the business. The moment transparency comes in, you know you have to disclose, you know this is available on the media, you will automatically step back. And this regulators have to interact both locally and globally. Because today, the market is one. You may be living in India, but you are catering to the world. So both the regulators, you have to be complying what is there in UK and what is available in India. So the one point important is E, the climate, and SG. Climate is urgent. You cannot wait now. We are already late, actually. So it is a situation whether we survive or not. It is for your own good that you address the E of the ESG immediately. When I said that you don't lose money, if you look at this, the MSCI India ESG leaders, look at the index and look at the normal MSCI index. It has consistently outperformed the index for the last 15 years. But unfortunately, India has very few funds which are focused on ESG, climate. The entire money comes from outside. But that is where there is an urgency for the government and the regulators to define the success of ESG, help steer corporate priorities, important, extremely urgent, and engage in policy advocacy. Probably that is what India CSR can do, and setting the expectations of the corporates. Well, this is something what UN has defined, the 14 SDG goals, 17 SDG goals, and they form a part of the Social Development Index. Probably, I don't want to dwell on it, but the fact is that the gender disparity and the availability of good health, water, sanitation are more important as they indirectly impact the environment. Because the more garbage you have on your cities, it impacts the environment. And that all because of the social factors which are present there. So what do we do from here? How do we take the ESG to next level? Doing your own corporate ESG does not help. Your supply chain also has to follow that. It has to be complete ecosystem built around ESG. Divestment as a ESG strategy. You leave the business which does not follow ESG. Sell it off. Close it off. Harmonized standards, which I've talked about. Education programs. And now the tool what we have in our hand, the social media and digitization. I think that's the thing for the success of ESG, which we have seen even Honorable Prime Minister has used so effectively in Jan Dhan and DBT and all. Oh, sorry. So while we can talk, so my recommendation, these are my 3 broad recommendations for the government and for the regulators, that ESG is to be made a part of balance sheet. It has to appear on your balance sheet either as a loss or as a profit. There has to be a line item like you have now in CSR on your P&L that I have spent so much on CSR. It's become mandatory. Similarly, so if you do not follow the ESG guidelines, you have a penalty from the government. But if you do something, you've got a tax cut. You may get a VAT refund sort of thing, a GST model, where you do good on ESG, you'll get some money back from the government through tax cuts. Create a social accounting matrix. I can always say that I've done A, B, C, D, but how do I monetize that S? What is the number I can assign to that S? I have given drinking water to 5 million people. What is the monetary value of that 5 million people? We have to define that structure. So everything should come on the balance sheet and the corporates will automatically fall in line. Let me tell you this, only 5 to 10% of the people in the world are self-disciplined. I can, of course, talk about India. Not more than 10 people are self-disciplined. 90% people need a stick. Discipline always comes through stick. We know that. Even for your children, you know, until or unless you scold them, they'll not study so easily. So that is extremely important. There is a saying that you don't shout, don't scold somebody, he will not listen to you. It's a very old saying that जब तक बच्चा रोता नहीं है, माँ भी दूध नहीं देती है. So this is what we have to assign a number to it. And most important, the topic of discussion is happening, how to separate ownership and management. The boards have to become more transparent with more independent people, and the ownership and the management has to de-link with each other. We have done about corporates and government, but what about us? What are we doing about it? This picture tells you there's a Davos conference which is going on as we speak in World Economic Forum. 1,500 individual private jets landed into that Davos airport during 2 days period. And all these 1,500 people were talking about ESG when they went inside. But traveling by those private jets was an environmental and a social disaster. So this dichotomy has to change. We have to do something about this ourselves. We have to see how sustainable we are as an individual, and we have to see how I change my living and how I change my consumption patterns, how I change my traveling pattern. That is so important. Small thing about Essar, what I talked about. We are into energy, metal mining, infrastructure, technology and retail. Energy means even oil and gas. And that is not what we want it to be. So what we are trying to do, we're trying to decarbonize, decentralize, give more authority so that transparency is there. A lot of people are trying to see what can be done, and digitize. Now digitize is something, it is another form of transparency, because then you cannot fiddle with the data. It is available on social media, it is available in places. So people know what is happening, what is not happening. They can gauge you by what they are trying to do. We walk the talk. Essar Foundation is doing the S part very diligently, trying to uplift the social fabric wherever they are operating. And this map just tells you what we are trying to do. So important is you must walk the talk, what I speak, and that's why it came in the last, that what I spoke, we believe that we will be also doing the same. Thank you so much.